Alright folks, this is Toby from Digital Photo Rec. I am minus Christina tonight, but I did promise in our last image critique that I would be back in here this week because we had a shorter one, some time constraints, and just you all have been pouring energy into this group, and so I would like to return some of that to you. I am going to work through a whole pile of images. Not going to spend quite as much time as we do when Christina and I both sit down and critique, but enough that something I like about the image, something I think could improve it, and let's just get started. So we're just going to roll right through. So Zsudo has this image up of this cool place in someplace in Spain skiing. I already said too much. Okay, I like this image. It's nice. We got a little bit of distracting elements with just this bit of car hood down here. We could just raise it up just a tiny bit. But otherwise kind of nice. And this area over here on the right doesn't add much. I think we could shift a little bit and capture a little bit more of this curve that I think is a run that goes just off the frame and back on. It would be nice to include all of that. And you were shooting at 35, so you had a little bit of room to back out of that. Alright, here from Valerie. Valerie's been uploading a couple of pictures where she's experimenting with this slower shutter speed. I'm not sure you were using a tripod for this, Valerie. You may want to watch my video on mirror lockup, tripod, and 2-second timer to really make sure you are nailing the camera is being absolutely steady during your shot. This is a really cool location, but you've got a long enough shutter speed of 15 seconds that you've got almost a complete blowout spot here. Now, if you shot raw, probably most of that would be recoverable by bringing your highlights down, but still very, very bright. And of course, we've got a slightly crooked horizon. Got to get that horizon straight in this case. And I think this could work really well as a black and white too, so I'd like to see that. But neat spot. Looking forward to more pictures there. This is cool. Saul, great. My eye immediately goes to this person right here, and I can feel the energy from their kick. The downside is then my eye is caught by this large white area here where the flash is really lighting up the back of this lady, and that is taking away some of my enjoyment of this image. And she's actually great. I think you could go a little bit faster shutter speed though, because we're getting a little bit of blur up here in her hair. But at the same time, you could argue that that adds a sense of motion. Overall, I think this is a really cool shot. Thank you. Jed Farnham, foliage in winter. Now, this is pretty. I think that you were shooting at 100 millimeters f7.1. You could be shooting at a shallower depth of field that I think would nicely accentuate, kind of isolate these, I'm going to say these are pine needles, in the foreground and soften what's in the background, kind of drawing your eye to this subject, and I think that would be nice. You're down to 1/10 of a second too. Is that handheld? Because you want to watch out for that. You're getting kind of slow, but I don't really notice any blurriness from motion blur. I just see some blurriness from the depth of field, but I'd like to see even a little bit more to really layer this image here. Thank you. Xspirit. This is in Ecuador. This is a really beautiful location. I love the exposure of the landscape and the texture and feeling of it. There's not much going on in the sky, so I think you could drop this frame down some and really just kind of capture this land dropping away from you, because we're up here on high, and then the pond and the lake. And I catch the sight of this little boardwalk down here. I'd like to know or see a little bit more about that. So bring that frame down a little bit would be my suggestion here. But this is a really nice shot with the G12. Cool. I saw this shot when I was going through earlier, and I mean, this belongs on the cover of National Geographic. This is an amazing shot. I don't have any criticisms for it. I would be happy and probably retire from photography if I took a shot like this. No, I wouldn't retire. But I do want to point out that I'm not going to try to pronounce your name. You point out very nicely that you spent about 50 hours and you got this shot, and you had about 15 to 20 seconds of fighting between these two golden eagles. For anybody who didn't know, these are golden eagles. Very cool. And that is gorgeous. Just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful shot and a really nice moment captured. You had the patience. You went out to make this shot, and you were successful. Awesome. Fabio. This is a neat shot. You are a little crooked, and that really bothers me here. There are times when a crooked horizon is okay, when it is clearly deliberate, but then there are times when it's not. And I do like we've got the people all looking different ways. We've got a little bit of a person hanging on right here that is distracting. But other than that, I like this perspective. I like this moment captured, and straighten your horizon. This is cool. Kavan, you uploaded another one I saw when I was going through. I would like to see a before and after. How much of this is post-production? How much of this is pre? But this is a really cool shot, lit really, really well, and framed quite nicely too. Spur 83. Beautiful, beautiful sunrise over frozen river. This immediately makes my fingers start to hurt and think that they are cold. I like this shot. I think we could be off to the right a little bit more. Now, of course, all of my opinions here are my opinions, and you know, I don't know if there was something constraining you. Maybe this is as far to the right as you could get. So I'm just offering suggestions for all of you on what I think could improve it and may have been possible, but I don't know for sure. So yeah, I think a little bit to the right kind of, and that would seem to me to be shooting up the river just a little bit more, and we'd have a little bit less of this tree coming in on the left. We get just a couple of these branches up here that really aren't adding much to that. Another aspect would be to move to the right and let those branches be really silhouetted by those colors in the sky. But really, really nice color. I wonder how much post-processing did you do? Did you have to do anything to bring out the colors? They look pretty spectacular, especially right down here on the edge. Really beautiful colors. And I love this little hints of reflection here too. And I wondered if there was any place else, not necessarily here, but any place nearby where you could have captured that as well. Probably not. Everything is probably frozen pretty solid. Chris has got a Leaning Tower of Eiffel. I see what you did there. Leaning Tower of Pisa, Leaning Tower of Eiffel. Now, I'm not a huge fan of leaning pictures, but for me, this mostly works because you framed it so nicely and it's going right up to the very left corner, starting in the bottom right corner. I wish this was framed a little bit more evenly down here, but overall I think it's nice. Exposure is great. You've turned this into a black and white in a really nice way that works well for me all the way up. You have nice detail. We don't really have any loss. Underside here is completely dark, but that's okay, that works, and there's nothing that's blown out either. So nicely done. All right, Fade to Black. You've got a lot of beautiful light painting work up. I'm gonna guess that this is a 2 exposure image. Oh wait, maybe you even said over here. I don't know if it's done before. Well, no, I didn't say, so I'm not sure. Let me know if this is a 2 exposure image. One where you did the yellow and one where you did the color. Yeah, look, because we got little swirls down here and we don't have swirls up there. This is really cool. The dock could be a little bit less lit, but you know, this symmetry here is really, really cool. This little reflection going over here keeps grabbing my eye, and this little bit of fade or smoke or something up there also doesn't add anything to the picture, but overall really nice. This is very cool. Picasso Tower in Madrid. You know, it is very abstract, but not quite abstract enough that you are trying to figure out what you're looking at. This is very, very cool shot. Very nicely exposed and post-processed. Just a hint of, or not a hint, but the reflection of the sun right there adds to it, doesn't take away from it. I really like this shot. Vincero had 2 shots. I can't remember. Your other one was Cassily or something. I can't quite remember, but this one is the one I picked. I like this. This is really neat as well. Black and white works really well here. May shift just a little bit to the left, but I say that, and I'm also thinking that would put the road more in the center, and I like that it's off center. I just feel like we have a little bit of space here that isn't doing much for me. But overall, that this road leading up to this wind tower, the sense of scale here is a little hard to tell, and then you see power line back here, and those are bigger power lines, but you're not quite sure how far back it is. I like that it's hard to tell the sense of scale here. I think that it works well for this image. Thank you. Osvaldo, apologize anytime I say people's names wrong. Your horizon is a little crooked as well, but this is nicely exposed, nice details in the feathers, nice reflection here as well. Your subject you've put straight on, And I think this image could be a little bit stronger if the subject was maybe over here, and then that would have gotten rid of those two rocks too. That is assuming that you had a nice clean area over to the right and there wasn't anything distracting over there. So you could offset your subject and straighten your horizon, but otherwise really nice shot. Muhammad. Beautiful flowers. The colors, the green and the orange, I feel like you might have bumped up the saturation some here, but not terribly, not overdone. The only thing that is this image, this flower right next to it isn't quite soft enough, and it is so bright that it does take away a little bit from this one being in complete focus. So I think you might be better off just isolating this flower in such a way that it's by itself. I Explore It, Irish Castle. This is neat. I would like this. The castle is very cool. The vines covering it, the age. But this is one of those things where it's been put right in the middle, and I'm not getting a sense of the place. I imagine that this is in a really cool location, kind of like up on the moors, valleys, and hills in the background. And I would like to see this castle with more of the surroundings, or really get up and fill the frame with the vines coming down onto the rocks. Those are some options I'd like to see in the future. Thank you. I Explore It. From G. Blackburn. Gary, from Gary. 100 millimeter, was it 100 millimeter macro? Yes. Just really cool detail in the bee's fur. Is that what you call a bee? And I wish we could see all of the bee, but at the same time it is a little interesting that it's hiding behind this leaf here. But really rich colors, really nailed the focus on the head of the bee, which is great, and your depth of field is enough, F9, that we are getting all of the important parts in focus. But yeah, just I'm being teased by that little bit of leaf that's blocking the view there, but nice shot, nice colors. Michael Kilner, sorry for anybody who's bug phobic. But we got some cool bugs here. I'd say crop in a little bit. Get rid of this. This looks like bug poop over here, and this little shadow isn't adding anything to it. So crop in and get just this big bug and maybe two of those smaller bugs there, and we'd get a little bit more detail here. You may have cropped in some already. I don't know. But within a little bit of clarity, it's quite sharp. Exposure's good. All that's good. I would just crop in a little bit. Roan Esterhuins. I don't know why I try to say some people's names. Colors here are spectacular. The lighting is cool. Might be a little hot in places, and in the post-processing, I think mostly this you added this. You've upped the saturation, and that works really well on the kiwi. It works well on the colors in the glasses. But then you look over here at the pineapple, back of the pineapple, and that may be a little overdone there. And we also have this kind of intersection of the glass and the lime, which you could pull back just a little bit and separate those. I think would make this a stronger image, or pull in and really just focus on one and then the other. Either or. Right now we've kind of got them jumbled together, but this kiwi here, so sharp, really nicely done, and the colors are pretty outrageous. Those look like space alien drinks. I'm Forest found this evil eye in its companion piece to the previous picture. I didn't see another previous picture in the gallery though, so this is neat. This is something else you could give it just a little bit of room, so this bottom corners of this triangle are exposed as in visible, and they almost are. It's a very small difference in composition or cropping, but otherwise it's a nifty picture. Roy is great, sends me all kinds of things that I share with you all from time to time on the Facebook page. This is cool incense smoke. I see it's coming. I think it's coming from this bottom right here. We've got a nice depth of field for this. It really kind of fades out the stuff in the background. Really, this swirl is very cool, and stuff in the foreground is starting to fade out too. I'd like to see just enough of a shift to really kind of put this bottom right down in the bottom right, and I think that would give us a little bit more room for these pieces over here that are cut off, and a little bit better framing, but otherwise really nice. And you can see working with the 55 to 250, 70 millimeters, f4 gives us a really nice depth of field. The background is completely blown out, so it is quite possible to get those backgrounds with those lenses. Rose has been out to Red Rock Canyon outside Las Vegas. This is a beautiful, beautiful spot. Really nice blue sky. I feel like these rocks here are a little hot. Hot meaning a little bright. We could bring the exposure down in this area. Now, I'm going to pretend or make the assumption, and I do this for almost all of you, that you're shooting raw and that you have Lightroom. So if you don't have those things, you can ignore this. But if you do have those things, you could paint on here just a little bit of a darker exposure, or even just throw a gradient on here. And that might bring out this texture just a little bit more. And you could also boost the colors in these rocks a little bit without making the sky look oversaturated. But this is a pretty cool shot. Another option is, I noticed this kind of mesa. I'm going to use my geography terms there. In the background, I don't actually know if it's mesa. You could try shifting this image to the right a little bit, because you only need part of these rocks to tell this story here, and then we could kind of get a sense of what's off in the distance more of this right here. But overall, really cool spot. Ibrahim, Client Night in Desert. I'm not sure what client means, but this is very cool. I've done long exposure star pictures before, but never ones where I've captured the foreground like this, and this is really cool. Now, you're kind of breaking the rule of thirds here because the horizon is split almost evenly, but that works, and we just have this really nice upward slope and really cool stars. I'm not sure what this is, and it doesn't add anything to the image. I would clone it out using Lightroom or Photoshop, or I would recompose the image so that it wasn't in there. Otherwise, very nice. Mark's got a nice sunrise heart. This is a nice picture. My first thought is, I don't know if the palm fronds coming down in the background add anything to this picture. I think just a heart cleanly might do it. But then I think about how I often recommend layering in images to give yourself a depth of field. And with these being softer in the background, they could add something, but I come back to, you can see I'm a little torn here. I come back to no, they don't really add anything. So I'd like to see this just clean. Those could be off on the side or coming down at the top, but they don't need to be intersecting with the heart itself. But otherwise, exposure is nice, and this is something fun you can do to kind of dress up a sunrise or sunset. I think many people immediately think sunrise, sunset, I got this image, it's going to be awesome. But there's every day there's a sunrise and sunset, and millions of people take pictures of them. So there are times where you need to do something a little bit different, get something in between you and the sun, silhouetted or otherwise. So that's pretty cool. Thanks, Mark. Derek Hymason has this photo, and I like this. I'm pretty sure this is an HDR, but it doesn't really look like an HDR at first. But there are some weird things going on. Like if you look at these pilings over here, the colors on them are just a little funny, and so that's what's tipping me off that it's HDR. I also think it's interesting how much color is in the reflection versus up above. So that actually starts to bother me when I think about it. But when I'm not looking at that, I love the texture of the water. It's very nice. I love the texture of the boat. It feels very real and very palpable. So I like this. This is a nice shot. And I think that it is framed nicely. I think you'd be fine cutting this a little bit out here and just coming closer to the bow of the boat and just getting just a little bit tighter. You don't need as much of the sky, not much going on there. You've heard me say that on other images. But overall, a cool shot. Just have to watch out with HDRs and getting a little funny in places. But otherwise, I think that's great. Blarney Castle, getting ready for Paddy's Day. I love current pictures being uploaded. So this was taken on March 10th. Here it is in the group. That's awesome. And this is very green. Vitenis, I want to know how much post-processing you did here. Did you bring up the saturation a bunch? Because we got some crazy colors in the background too, some real purples and reds. What's going on over there? What castles are lit up with purples and reds over in that direction? But this is cool. Only this this modern art, that's what I'm going to guess it is here, does not add anything to this image, and it's kind of just intersecting in a funny way. Now, obviously you can't move that, but I wonder if there's any way to reframe this so that that isn't captured. And it doesn't look like it would be easy, but that would be my suggestion. These lights very bright here, shooting in RAW, you could bring that down just a little bit so those aren't grabbing attention as much and you're really focusing on the green of the castle. Neat shot. Gary, a Staffordshire poppy. I think the exposure level here could come up a little, and it also feels like the background may be not straight. But it feels a little flat, and it feels like it could be a little brighter and a little more contrasty. But the detail of this poppy up close is nice, and I love the fact that back there in the background there are lots. I also would wonder if you shifted a little bit to the left, you could then hide this kind of dead stick one back behind this poppy, because that is the next thing that my eye grabs onto after this. But otherwise it's cool. This is the Nikon D5100, 18 to 55 at 55 f/5.6. So you were shooting at an aperture, the best aperture you could shoot at that, I think, for this. So this is nice. I like it, but I think you could bring it up in exposure. You're shooting AV mode, so it shows the shutter speed, and I think you could have lowered that shutter speed a little bit to bring up the exposure. Jake, CPU Nut, Field of Dreams. This is a sweet shot. The colors here, the exposure is very, very nice. A little bit of shift to the right. You know, again, this is me saying in an ideal world, freeze time, because I know this little boy was moving through the grass here. And if you shifted a little bit to the right, you could shoot between these two bits of grass here and not have this one intersecting right across the eye. You know, edges of the face and things like that are okay. On this cheek right here is okay, but it would be nice if we could kind of peer through. It also looks like our focus, and again, you know, if I was in the same spot, same location, I very may likely have taken the exact same type of picture, for good, for better or worse. It looks like focus is just a little bit in front of the boy. He's not quite as sharp here. I can't see your metadata, so I'm not sure. But this bits of grass up in front of him, a couple of inches, feels a little sharper to me than the boy. And his face could be a little bit brighter in exposure as well. But really nice shot, really sweet moment. Ireland. Sorry, I just should not try pronouncing people's names. I love the compare and contrast here of this sleek, modern, shiny train on the right and this old gray. And I think you've done this post-processing, haven't you? Yes. You've made the left hand black and white, and maybe even added some grain to it. That's neat. I wish that, you know, I don't know how else you could have done that without having this piece right in the middle, but it's just right there in my face. Oh, and it's neat. You can see the reflection of the train and its color over here as well. So this is neat. This is a nice picture. I think you boosted the saturation over here as well a little bit. But the reflection is cool. That might almost be... I was just trying to think of a way you could frame this and capture the reflection of the old train and the new train, but that would be an immense amount of post-processing to get the kind of black and white grainy look in the thing without it looking like so. I think it's a neat shot. You said some French things about this image, and I don't know what that means. I could translate it. This is cool. Very, very backlit image. We got the sun right here behind whatever structure this is, and that's where my eye goes, and then it kind of wanders around, and then it discovers that you can see through and see these people down here, and that's neat. It's captured this moment of these people coming through this archway, silhouetted from the light on the other side. I think it works well. I think maybe go ahead and at least bring down the exposure all the way on this building so that it just you know, it's just bright enough that we're seeing pieces of it. And I think you should bring it down enough that it's just a complete silhouette. Cool shot. Magic Blue Hour in La Défense, the business district of Paris. This is neat because I'm seeing a side of Paris that I've never been, and this is really cool. I love the layering of this image in the roadways. We have this one in the foreground zooming by. We have this one coming around. We have this walkway or maybe a road right here, and this one back here. All of these adds a really nice depth to this image. I don't see any metadata, so I don't know, but I knew you were shooting at a very high aperture, which gives you those starbursts on the lights. Very, very cool. Just a really nice image. Just nicked the top of that right there. And it would be nice to have all of that in the frame. But otherwise, it's very cool. You could get rid of these guys right here too. You could crop in on that side, but minor. Oh, I already did one for you. That's a cool image though. So we're going to move on. Omar. This is a neat image. You have framed this airplane quite nicely. And it's a nice shot. And it's exposed nicely. And I feel like it's roaring by my head. Carlos. This is kind of a surreal shot. It's a little hard to tell what's going on here. D3100. Some kind of dream house. And yeah, I think it's good. Maybe you could crop in a little bit, get a little bit tighter. I feel like we've got a lot of empty space up here. We've got this kind of shadow right over here that's not adding much. Bring it down and crop in a little bit closer. Closer, closer, closer. Ninad, guiding light. This is a neat shot. I saw this shot earlier, and my first thoughts were so symmetrical that it works very well. You know, you've seen on some of the other images I've said, don't put the subject dead center. That works really well here. Then what I like about this is the next thing I notice is, whoa, we do have some light coming out of this lighthouse. Now, I'm going to assume that this is real and that you didn't add it in post. I don't know for sure, but it looks cool. The only downside is we got this really blown out inside. Again, shooting raw, you could bring that down so that it is, I'm not saying muddy that or, you know, just completely burn it out, but bring it down just a little bit so we get a little bit more of an even glow in here and not such a hot spot. But exposure in here is great. I think this wood is damp from rain. Really, really nice reflections in that. And just overall, a really nicely exposed image. It feels very wide. You're shooting at 13 millimeters on the D800, so that is a full frame camera, and that really is 13 millimeters, so it looks great. Nicely done. If I become ill, what will happen to me? Is poverty awareness in Honduras. Okay. This image is here to kind of provoke something in the viewer, and I think it does a good job of that. The little boy is framed very nicely against the white barrel, surrounded by these empty bottles, and it's, you know, it's depressing and speaks of poverty. He's obviously very dirty. It's been post-processed to really bring out that contrast. My only criticism, and well, let me first say that usually I recommend getting down on kids level or pets level and shooting straight on, but being up above a little bit and having him look up really accentuates the size of the eyes with the white underneath of them, and that all works very well. One thing here, one criticism is shooting at 18 millimeters. You're shooting very wide and you're pretty close to this little boy. You've kind of made his head bigger than normal. Now, I did a video many months ago where I talked about this very thing. I photographed my brother at his wedding and photographed him a little bit too close, a little bit too wide, and his head just looked big. And it's not a good look. And so the same thing with this little boy. So I would, you know, back up a little bit and shoot just a little bit tighter to give the boy a little bit more proportion. But otherwise, very strong image. Aditya. And a gentleman looking at his phone. That's the first thing I see. Now the next thing I see is this person's back here, a little bit of chub sticking out. So I really want you to think about your framing, think about distracting elements in the background, shoot at a very shallow depth of field to isolate your subject, or reframe so that they are free of distracting objects. And also we got, you know, just other stuff going on back there that doesn't add to the image. But thank you so much for submitting. And our last one is we hit 30 minutes from Amir. He took this with the old Russian manual lens on a D5100. The colors here, the exposure, this image has a really nice look and feel to it. Again, I've said this a bunch tonight on some of these images, but I'd like to know how much post-processing you did. You did a wonderful job. The only thing that I would suggest is maybe reframing this a little bit to the right so we can see down the road. You've heard me say that on other images, not tonight necessarily, but kind of see where this gentleman is going because it does look like a very cool scene. But otherwise, really, really nice, and I like the hint of the curve of the road, and there's more there. I'd like to see a little bit more otherwise. Thank you so much for watching this. I hope you've got something useful out of it. We will be back with more critiques next week. Maybe we'll get into next week. I don't know. Thanks so much for watching. And if you haven't already, please subscribe.